Hello. Um, so regarding the requirement to have a way to differentiate between web service action performed on an object and an action performed from inside Sales Cloud. Um, Now I've analyzed how this can be done. Out of the box, there is no way. The system will make absolutely no difference between web service actions performed on records and actions performed from inside Sales Cloud. Um, Based on what we discussed on the service request, seems that you have multiple users that will do these calls from web services. And also those users will use the application as well. So I guess using some job role to differentiate between these calls is out of the question. Uh, Now I've mentioned on the service request that all objects have something like this, have some field called um, object version. Let me just bring up here very fast. So for example, for the opportunity object, we have this is an opportunity I pulled up in BI. Um, you see here this attribute here, object version. Basically, this field, this column, or whatever attribute, it's going to be changed whenever an action happens on that specific record. Um, Now, this doesn't help you very much in your specific case, but what we can do is, starting from this idea, we can make a system to differentiate between these two, between actions performed by web services and actions performed by users inside the application. So what I will do, I'll make an example using opportunity object. Um, so the first thing I did here was I created myself a custom object. A custom field. This specific field. I made a text just to make it easier. So this field will never be available on UI, right? So a user using the application will never be able to manually update this field. Now, what I also did was I created a validation rule, um, and this validation rule will fire only when users perform actions inside the application. It will never fire if those actions are performed from the web service. Now, how this validation looks, it's pretty basic. So I'll cover two cases here. The case where we create a new record, this part here, and the case where we have a record and we just update it, this part right here. For the first part, the logic of the validation rule is like this. I am checking if the record is newly created through this line here, and then if the field is populated, then this validation rule will not fire. If the field is not populated, then the validation rule fires. Because the field is not displayed in UI, a user will never be able to manually update it or put a value in it, so the field will be null. Hence, the validation will fire if the record is created from inside the application. And in the web service call, I will include this field in the payload of that web service, and I will populate it with a random generated value. Now for the second case, when we have a record and we want to update it, I am checking if this field has its value changed. Uh, Again, if the field is not displayed in UI, a user will never be able to manually change the value. So um, the value will be changed only through the web service. And again, the value that will be the field is included in the web service payload, and the value that will be put in it will be a random generated value. um, so see, this is just like that object version number thing, only that this time the value only comes through to this field through the web service, never from UI. um, so to demonstrate this, I'm going to use SOAP UI tester. I created there two projects using REST API and Opportunity. We have this project and this project. um, what happens in this one is that I will try to simulate calls coming from your custom CPQ application. If I remember correctly, that CPQ application you are using or you are developing is based on Java, so it should be fairly simple to include in the payload of the web service a field like I just made uh, here. And also will be fairly simple to generate some value for it. Let me show what I did here, and maybe you can adjust this to your specific case. So what I did here was, this is the patch call to a specific opportunity. This is actually the opportunity. Let me show you. If you go to opportunities, let me see all my opportunities. Okay, so this opportunity here. Uh, so the SOAP UI. Okay, so this an update on that specific opportunity. What I'm going to update will be the probability of that opportunity, and for that specific purpose, I've created this code here. This is actually Groovy code. In case you didn't know, SOAP UI actually allows you to create this kind of scripts inside it. So what happens here is, this is where the REST API, the patch operation is called, and this is actually its payload. And now what I'm doing here, I'm actually going to update 10 times consecutively that opportunity, uh, and each time the probability will change. Now, besides the opportunity being changed, I have included in the payload that field, and that field, that custom field I made, will get a random number. So each time one update comes, a new value is put in this field. And as you saw earlier, my validation logic has that method is attribute changed included in it. So if this field changes, we shouldn't have the validation fire. If the field doesn't changes, then the validation will fire. I'll actually can test this right now. So if I just do an update on that opportunity without changing the value in this field, we should get uh, the message from the validation, right? So validation fired. Now if I run this from here, you can watch it. Let me put this side by side. You can see here how the opportunity attribute changes, opportunity probability changes. Or you can watch it right here in the console, because I've included some print lines for each iteration of the for loop. So let's run this, and you can see that's the first one. I don't know if you can see it right here in. Let me see. We improve this, so there you go. You see it; it's changing with no problems, because in my payload I am actually generating a new number each time, and I'm supplying a value in here. So my validation logic will see this field being changed, and that means the update comes from the REST web service and our validation doesn't fire just as the requirement. Now if I try to do the same thing, so now my opportunity has a win probability of 55. So we had 10 consecutive executions updates on this specific opportunity. If I open this up, this is actually the opportunity. You see we have 55. Now if I try to modify this to 56, as you can see I don't have that field on UI, and I try to save it, validation fires. Alright, so we just achieved the requirement you have. We made it so that the system or the validation included in its logic difference between REST calls actions on the opportunity and actions from the UI. Okay, so that would be a possible implementation for updating existing records, and this can be used for any object you want. You can make on any object a field like the one that I showed you, and use similar logic. Now let me show the case where we want to create a new opportunity. Before, if the field is not populated with some value, I should get the validation rule, the validation error, right? The validation fired. And again, the user is not able to actually update or insert some value in that field because the field is not displayed on UI. Now, to test this with web service, I did the following thing. I actually set up my SQL database on my machine. I'm using here SQL developer, SQL developer, and this I created. This is my my SQL database, and I actually created a table in there called Opti, and in which I put some values. I actually just have two columns here. One of the columns is name. What I will do with SOAP UI, I will SOAP UI tester. I'm going to pull these values from here, and I'm going to pass them in a post operation on the opportunity web server, on opportunity REST web service, and create opportunities with these names. How did I do that? Was, well, I created here a post opti project, and what I did here was I actually connected to my SQL database right here. You can see this is how you can connect to an external database using SOAP UI tester. And if I run this query, I returned all those values from my database, from my table. And then what I did was I created the post call right here. This is the post call. And again, I'm using some Groovy script here to actually with the for loop to actually generate 10 calls, or 10, not 10 calls, I'm not sure how, let's see how many of these things are, 8 calls to the post operation, and hopefully on the end of it we should have 8 opportunities with these names specifically in the application, right? So just as before, my custom field needs to be populated with some value. If it's not, the validation will fire. So for example, this is the post call. If I manually remove this from the payload and I just run this, I should get the validation, right? So validation fired, but I am not but in here you see the payload here is being created from the name and some number that will be generated randomly, right, for each call. So you can follow up here, or you can follow up the console as the iterations happen. So let's run this. And we have the first opportunity created. Now we have the second one, third one. You can see here also look at the number, it changes. So that's pretty much it. We just generated all these opportunities. If we go in UI and we do a search for my records, we should get all those opportunities. Right, so we have here the opportunities. Now if I try to do the same thing from here, as you can see, I'm getting the validation. Okay, so that's pretty much the idea. The idea is to create your own custom field, include this field in the payload coming from your custom CPQ application, and I do remember you are able to create Java code on data in that CPQ application, and I think it should be fairly easy for a programmer to incorporate some random generated value and update this field, this custom field, each time you have a call from there, and then incorporate in your validations or your triggers from the application composer logic to take in consideration a field like this. If the value changes, that means the call comes from the rest, and you should the validation or trigger should ignore that, or whatever you did. Okay, I hope I was able to explain you my idea, and I hope I was able to show you exactly how this could work in a real situation. Let me know what you think on service request, and we'll see from there. Thank you for watching.